Ares Kingdom, welcome to 69 Faces of Rock. How you guys doing?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm good.
Very well, yeah.
Hello, doing good.
All right. Introduce yourself and tell me what you do in the band.
Alex Blume, bass, vocals.
Chuck, play guitar.
Mike, and I play the drums.
Okay, so how did Ares Kingdom came to be?
After Order from Chaos, we took a little bit of time off and regrouped, and I started to do a different project called Vulpecula, and one thing led to another. Mike had been in another band.
I don't think we really ever had a name. It was kind of...
Band without a name.
But they started to record a demo, and it never got finished. And so when I was doing some Vulpecula stuff, Mike said, "Hey, can you record the drum tracks for me so I can have them?" Because he wrote the parts and wanted his drum tracks, and so I recorded them for him. And I said, "Well, why don't I just put some music
Oh, you're
to
talking
this?"
about Serapis. Okay.
Serapis, yeah,
Serapis,
Serapis,
yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
And so I took a weekend and I had some riffs laying around, and in fact, one or two of them came from the old Order from Chaos days that I just never used, and threw them to the drum tracks, and Mike and I recorded them in the same studio where Vulpecula was working, and did a demo, and it came out rather well and was very well received, and kind of went from there. That's how we got started. And then Alex joined in 2000, and first on vocals, and then we shifted him to vocals and bass because that's what he did in his old band.
Yeah, an old band called Nepenthe that did a couple little things back in the mid-90s.
And it was basically a Order from Chaos, Nepenthe, Vulpecula were one big circle of people.
Both of you enjoy like a really special dynamic playing with each other for so long. Was it natural that you guys continue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. We had a pretty instant chemistry in OFC because we kind of wrote together, I guess. I mean, he wrote the parts, the guitar parts, brought them to me, and then I fashioned what I did, and he writes kind of from a drummer's perspective anyway, which makes it a little easier for me. But we just worked and got a chemistry built up, and it just it'd be hard to work with somebody else at this point, I think. So
What was it like to come in and work with these two guys who play with each other for so many years?
Well, I hung out with these guys back starting in 1989.
Okay,
to
so you have a
95.
history.
So, because I was a big Order from Chaos fan, they had a thing called the Bastard Squad of all their buddies. And there weren't a ton of us, maybe 10 at the max size, but I was just one of those people. So I hung out with these guys for years and had my own little band and shit. So, so we had a pretty good rapport already. So.
I think also the big question is how much Order of Chaos is maintained within.
Well, it's 2/3 of the members.
I know, but musically,
Huh?
Style-wise.
Well, 2/3 of it. Really. I mean, because it's me writing music and Mike writing his drum parts. It's basically 2/3 of Order from Chaos. So a great deal is left over, but at the same time, it's not like we wanted to keep just doing Order from Chaos. We were still pushing what we wanted to do, what our collective vision was. We were pushing that forward with Ares Kingdom. And then I was drawing on some of my Vulpecula stuff too, especially after 1999. So Ares Kingdom became more or less a collective version of the two other bands.
Cool. Let's talk releases. Show each record and tell me whatever we need to know. So, there you go.
This is
First
the
album.
original one, 2005.
Yep.
Took quite a while to record. We bought our own recording equipment and basically learned how to use it over a year and basically recorded this one. So they had done a home recording and I'd done a bit too with Order from Chaos and my band Nepenthe. So we knew how to record, but that was under someone else's gear, so we had to buy our own gear and basically learn how to use it. And so it was completely. Well, every one of these albums is completely recorded, mixed, mastered, produced by the band. Like we don't go to studios. Never have. I haven't in a long time.
No outside help.
What reception did you get on this album?
Pretty good reception because we're really early on. We've been on Nuclear War Now the whole time, and he did a couple Berlin festival. When was the first one? I don't know.
2009.
2009. So we got to go to Europe multiple times over that. And it had a good reception, I think. So, yeah.
All right. How did things go to the second album? Grab this.
Second album was, I like to refer to Incendiary as Return to Dust on steroids, because it really took the ideas, the foundations that we set out in Return to Dust and expanded on them, exploded the boundaries, pushed ourselves. There's a lot packed into this album in terms of composition and theme and performance, and even the production. We went a slightly different direction that we continued to refine through the years, but there's a giant walking around downstairs. It's really just an album that, yeah, it's Return to Dust on steroids. It's the best way I can think of to
It's about 6
talk
minutes
about.
longer, and there's a lot more complex parts
Yeah,
than in Return to Dust.
yeah, there's a lot
They
more
got
in
a
it.
little more progressive in terms of the complexity.
And there are a lot of people that this is their favorite album, and it's interesting that so we have different kinds of fans. We have fans that like the slow, heavy, brutal stuff that we do, and then there's fans that like the more progressive and thoughtful, lyrical, big, complex stuff that we do.
With this record, were you able to achieve things Order from Chaos couldn't achieve?
Well, we could do that on this album. I mean, because this album is basically what Order from Chaos would have done anyway. So, this album just kept pushing that boundary. I mean, in so many ways, this band is like the continuation of Order from Chaos that we intended to do when the band stopped in '95. So, yeah,
It is, but on the other hand, Order from Chaos, for me, an outsider perspective, was trying to achieve an exact sound, which they got on Ending in Fire, and they were kind of almost done, because where else are you going to go when you're like tapering in on this exact sound, whereas Ares Kingdom has a lot more room to kind of try different things. There's no prescribed kind of like sound exactly like this, Pentultimate, and then call it, because there's other places we can go with it. So.
Record number 3.
This is The Unburial Dead, came out in 2015. And this album, I don't know, concept I think is kind of a strong word, but it's really, the whole thing's based around things and events and the horrors of World War I, which Chuck is very involved in and has studied. It's one of his passions. This is kind of a unique album because it's got it even it further advances off Incendiary, because it's got for the first time we kind of tried to do a little bit slower stuff, but there's also the atypical Ares Kingdom kind of faster parts, but it's all to a degree. There's some of the songs that are a little complex. And Stoltafire and Avis, the last song, is over 10 minutes long.
that's basically what There Lies Your Lord was on the last Order from Chaos album. That's what Stoltafire and Avis is for this album.
I think on this record we really really stretched our legs, in an experimental way. Not that I know experimental kind of goes wrong sometimes, but it really was a good album. It was fun to record, fun to write. I wish we could play more from all of our records, but there's some songs on here I'd really like to play, but we don't get the kind of time to play all the songs we want to play in these shows. But very good album. I like it.
At this point, were you able to promote these records by touring? How did that look?
Yeah, we did. We toured on this record in Europe, and did a couple of tours in North America and the U.S. and Canada.
Small 1 or 2 week things.
Yeah,
in the U.S. and Europe, Canada.
Certainly the most touring we've done up to this point, but where we go from here, it'll just keep going. We'll probably eclipse the touring that we did for this album, or for Unburial Dead with this new album.
We've been lucky because we have a lot of friends and a lot of good contacts. You know, Eric and the guys in Watain, and KK and the guys in Destroyer 666, and you know, multiple other bands that you know, they once they bring us out, they, you know, they can see that we're, you know, we're definitely professional enough to handle it, you know, a tour, and to know what to do and what not to do. And I think it's resonated and helped us get more shows, you know, especially this one, you know, this tour we're on now. So
That certainly helps when you know you're dependable. All right, next album.
So this one, By the Light of Their Destruction, Chuck kind of like purposefully was going in a more dark, primitive direction. We almost say we're not progressing anymore, we're regressing. And it's more focused, because there's just an Incendiary and an Unburial Dead. There's a lot of stuff, like, you know what I mean? This one, I think we even cut a song out of this one that didn't make the album, just to not throw everything in the kitchen sink in this one. The production is a lot more primitive, purposefully. It wasn't an accident. Like I said, we record everything out of our house, so whatever it sounds like, we don't think they're. We have issues with them once they're done. Nothing we think is perfect, but a lot of it is very purposeful in the sound of it. So, and that's pretty much it. I mean, even the album cover of this.
It's very dark.
Yeah, it's trying to match the mood of the album, basically. So.
and a lot of things, and all of the art on our albums, Chuck here spends, you know, hours and hours searching for works that not only fit, but you know, we can, you know, I guess legally use, you know, without any repercussions. And but the main purpose of it is he looks for something that fits what we have entitled the record. And I think he's done a masterful job figuring out, like Incendiary here, you know, the title speaks for itself, and you've got, you know, Statue of Liberty basically in flames, which kind of speaks to, you know, what we were trying to say. And then, you know, the rest of these pieces, it's beautiful artwork, and we don't want to do your typical, you know, bands of our genre usually have kind of, you know, pretty primitive, or, you know, kind of not very well thought out. And that's the one thing we kind of pride ourselves on is our packaging, especially with the album cover. I think we try to have them speak volumes before, you know, anyone even sees the record. They're like, oh my God, that's a really cool cover. So.
And what really goes through your mind when you search for these art pieces?
I'm an appraiser, and I work with a lot of fine art,
Okay.
from paintings to sculpture to whatever. Any kind of the visual arts I work with extensively, rare books, historical artifacts, things like that. So, I mean, I'm inundated with art constantly. So that's my advantage, is that I can look, or I know how to search for artwork that's in the public domain, and that's the key to this whole enterprise. You know, as we don't have an art budget with NWN, so things have to come cheaply or free, just so we can do the records. And it's actually a lot easier to work with dead artists. They don't talk back, and you know, at the same time, their work is what it is, and so if one work doesn't work for you, tough, move on, find something else. And so, like Mike said, yeah, I do spend a lot of time scouring the annals of time and looking back through art history to find something that fits. And I have just libraries full of possibilities that I distill down and figure out, okay, what's the thrust of this album? What's the theme of this album? What are what is going to bookend the scope of the album artistically? And then I'll pull out a couple of candidates that I can never decide from, and I throw it to these guys and go, what do you think? And they'll go, we like that one. And I'm like, okay, then that's the one we'll use. So, yeah, that's the way the artwork gets chosen.
That's a very interesting fact. That you have so much at your disposal.
Yeah, well, I've been an appraiser for 25 years, so yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff through the years. So, yeah.
This fourth release was a bit rough because the pandemic hit pretty shortly afterwards, so we didn't really get to play much to kind of
we
push
did
it.
3 shows before everything closed down.
Yeah.
But it happened to a lot of bands.
What do you guys do? I mean, we know what he does. What do you guys do besides being in a band?
I'm a software architect for Fortune 500, like application security stuff, so computer nerd.
Actually, I'm a manager at a small supply company in Kansas City, where we're from. Been there for 30 plus years, and it allows me, I've built up enough vacation time that I can do tours like this. So I'm very appreciative that I get to do these sort of things. I think we all are pretty fortunate. So that's about it.
Outstanding. Nice album.
So this is great. This is a great segue because one thing I really like about this new album, In Darkness at Last, is the cover art. And the reason I like it so much is because it more or less bookends the first, fourth, and fifth albums. You can look at the first album, and you have this kind of Romanesque architecture. This is actually a turn-of-the-century depiction of before the comet Halley came back in 1910. There was a lot of fear about what it was going to do to the Earth. And this illustration was done around the turn of the century, or just after, I think, depicting the destruction of London, as a matter of fact. And so you've got I think it's one of the museums in London. You've got the Romanesque columns and the building crumbling. That's really cool, right? Well, so then you go to By the Light of Their Destruction, and this is actually a piece by John Poynter that is illustrating one of Shakespeare's works, Julius Caesar, and this is Caesar and his wife looking out at a returning comet, this portent of evil, of destruction that was coming, that would foreshadow their end. And then you go to In Darkness at Last, and here, this is actually the eruption of Vesuvius, destroying Pompeii. But it's cool because here's this building with the columns, and I like to pretend, well, it's covered by the sticker, but there's a building here, a building with a colonnade out front that it's almost like it looks out from this. Like you're looking out from this building here at the destruction that this album pretended. And what's cool about it is this album was a very different album from Unburial Dead. Like Mike said, the Unburial Dead is this quasi-conceptual album about the First World War. Well, this album's completely different. This album picks up, this album picks up where Vulpecula left off in 1999. Thematically, lyrically, the direction that I was going to go when the band ended. So this album, put together with this album, they're siblings, more or less. The scope of the lyrics, the scope of the themes are very, very similar. So yeah, sibling albums, but the production on In Darkness at Last, I think we've perfected what we do with this album in terms of how it sounds. In the old days, we would brick wall some of our recordings and master wise, and it would be really loud and boisterous. There was no nuance in it. But I think we've progressed, because we're all about regression actually. But we've changed our production style to the point where we allow the sounds to breathe and be a little bit more organic. And I think we've really mastered that on In Darkness at Last. And like Alex said, we haven't gotten to tour on the last album, so we'll be touring on these two albums for a while.
We basically are playing, that's what we're going to play tonight, besides covers, it's just those songs for the most
So
part.
get used to it.
Get used to it.
And this is, The Darkness at Last is also kind of like Incendiary 2, Return to Dust, where it's like, these are kind of siblings where this kind of perfected a lot of this. And this was even bigger and more expansive, where this, and then the new one perfected the sound to be even more muscular and just heavy with ripping drums, but it's even tighter and more condensed. It's only 39 minutes. It's the shortest AK release, so it's even trying to just where this one blew up and was 49 minutes with all this crazy extra, not extra, but a lot of stuff, this was even shorter than this one. So, and I think we got a really good, strong,
Now,
more
also, I
details
believe
kinda
there's a
sound.
record full of covers, right?
Right, Veneration.
Tell me about that.
It's currently out of print, but we pulled together bands that influenced one or more of us through the years, and that we all liked in common. We
We really tried to do like an updated times version of what Metallica did, and when they did the Garage, the 499 EP, whatever they call it, where they pulled together all these, by mainstream standards, obscure bands. And, you listen to them like, oh, I kind of like that. And then when you actually went back and heard it, you're like, oh, I get this. I see where Metallica was coming from. That's what we did with Veneration. We kind of pulled together, some of these bands that we listened to, in our younger days, and, did some covers we thought were, needed to be made.
Bands we really loved, and even some of our friends, or a lot of our friends, didn't even know what any of it was. Like Sacrilege and Mephisto and Are You Dead and Slaughterlord, and so we kind of are cluing in to people in our underground peer group about some of these bands.
Some of those bands were only demo bands.
Yeah, most of them are. Most of them are only demo
Like
bands.
Mephisto, I remember that. Hey.
But they're brilliant demo bands.
Yep.
So
Bands that probably needed to have a little more recognition but never got it.
and then we did a Vulpecula cover and then did a Pente cover, which is not a band, and then we did the Dokken cover for the sheer fuck of it, just to show people that we could. So, yeah.
Cool. What's the best thing about being in this band?
Just the fact that, we've been friends. I mean, I've been friends with Chuck for, I hate to say it, but close to 50 years. We went.
That's amazing, actually.
We went to the same schools, all through, kindergarten, and grade school, and high school. We started Order from Chaos. We were both, young, 18, 19. Other than that small time period between the, OSC's ending and AK's beginning, that was really the only time we haven't done anything together musically. It's just, it's just a really good rapport. I mean, it's one of those things that I look forward to, all the processes we go through. I mean, we have our arguments and all that about writing and recording and all that, but in the end, it's very, very satisfying. Once we've written a song or writing songs and it comes together, it's such a satisfying process that it's like even if for some reason we never could play shows again, even if we just rehearsed together and wrote new music and recorded, I think I'd be happy with that.
This is definitely a real band and not a project band. We bang it out we banged it out in the practice room once a week for 20 years. So, which shows on stage, because when we make mistakes, we can correct. People don't even know we make mistakes. We can shift around on a dime. You can't count some of this with a click track or metronome. It's not countable. So that gives us a lot of that real old school 80s and earlier kind of sound. The other cool thing with this band is purity of purpose. We're trying to make the best albums we can. We don't really care at all if we get a big fan base, or we can't even spend 3 months touring or anything. So there's no purpose for us to try and appeal to people. This is exactly what we want these to sound like. We're glad people like it and glad people bring us out for shows here or there. But otherwise,
We kind of have
that's it.
a funny theory that we would rather have 20 or 30 super diehard fans that they know the lyrics, they're, when we come to play, they're like, oh, this album is great, or da 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 da, than have a bunch of a couple of thousand guys running around in a shirt that, well, I just bought it because everyone else has got one.
Yeah, I mean, with Aries Kingdom, no one kind of likes Aries Kingdom. They love it or they just don't care.
Yeah.
Which is fine. There's a million bands, so it's all good,
Any final words?
I like that they put up with all my horse shit. I'm not really the easiest guy to work with when I compose, because it's just usually what I write is what we work with, and I'm basically the sole riff writer in the band, and so I come up with the songs, come up with the progressions, and.
Well, one good thing is, especially over the last, I'd say 2.5 records, whereas in the beginning Chuck was pretty fastidious about, no, it's going to be, my head says this many times in a riff, or I imagine this. I mean, in the last 2.5 records, me and Alex have really, thrown in a lot more of what we think it should sound like, whether it's times or no, we should go back to this, or no, this part doesn't really sound good. Maybe we should, shift a riff here and there, and it really has worked really well. I mean, we've really had a lot of fun writing and
Well, I'll just say
recording.
Mike is our drummer. Mike over here has always been the secret weapon, as far as I'm concerned, of Order from Chaos and Ares Kingdom, because he writes really interesting beats. He isn't, not put up against anybody in death metal in terms of what he builds beat wise. It is not standard anything, like ever, basically. So, which is, that's a lot of how the old guys did it in
Yeah,
the 70s.
yeah.
Like, so Mike brings a lot of that to the table. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.